The time has arrived to talk about all the books that I read in March and all the books that I want to read in April. I feel like March was such an interesting reading month for me. For the first 2 weeks of March, I did absolutely no reading. And then for the last week and a half of March, I did basically all of my reading. Aside from 2 5-star reads, the rest of the books that I read were pretty meh. The first book that I want to start with is Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I've DNF'd this book so many times. I feel like I've DNF'd it no less than 5 times. I kid you not. Every time I start it, I get bored, end up DNFing it. One day I was just like, you know what, I need to finish this book and decide if I even want to continue the series. And let me tell you, I'm not going to be continuing the series. I didn't turn on the light in my kitchen, so hopefully this video isn't dark. Should I turn on the light? What do you get? This doesn't make me yellow. I don't know. I'm gonna leave the light on just in case, as the sun is unreliable today. This is the second book in the Red Queen series, kind of like a dystopian fantasy type of series. You have the Reds, then you have the Silvers. The Reds are basically the slaves to the Silvers because the Silvers are the elite, the ones with magical abilities. The Reds have no magical abilities whatsoever. It is a YA fantasy, so the characters are very young, and I find that the main character can be a little immature and a little impulsive, but that's because of her age. The thing is, I don't like characters like that, so I found this book very hard to get through. It was also very boring. A lot of nothing happened until like the very last end of the book. I did spoil the third book by reading reviews because I wanted to see if I should even bother to pick up the third book, and a lot of people were saying that they didn't like how the third book ended, and honestly I just don't want to put myself through that. So I am just going to DNF this series, and I ended up giving Glass Sword a 1-star rating. I honestly just did not like the writing. I did not like the pace. I didn't like the characters. Didn't like the plot developments. I really didn't like anything about this book. And then let's talk about a 5-star read. This book brings a smile to my face. Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole. This book is perfection. I know that I just talked about Glass Sword, which I gave 1 star. Let me balance out this video by talking about this book. This book was absolutely perfection. The 2 main characters, the banter, the side characters, the scenery, cliffhanger at the end, everything about this book just made me smile. It is a fantasy, but it reads like a romantic comedy fantasy. I've never read a fantasy book that was actually really funny. Like, there were parts in this book that had me laughing out loud, and again, I was smiling throughout the entire thing. It's basically what the title suggests. It follows a main character who is the assistant to her kingdom's villain, but he's not really a villain because he doesn't hurt anyone that's innocent. He only hurts those who have hurt him or who want to hurt him. He even hurt someone for hurting a duck. Like, come on, that is not villain behavior, that is king behavior. It's dual POV in certain parts, but I would say that 95% of the book is told from the female main character's POV, which I didn't mind at all. I loved getting little glimpses into the villain's mind, and it's very slow burn. I didn't know that this book was actually part of a series. It was news to me once I read the cliffhanger, and I was like, wait a minute, this is how this book is going to end. Apparently it's part of a 3-book series. The second book comes out this fall, which I am going to pre-order immediately. I need to know what's going to happen between these 2 characters, and look how stunning the pages are. Red, like, come on. The cover, gorgeous. If you read any book that I talk about in this video, read this one. It's also not spicy, so if spiciness is not your thing, you can read this one. I don't know if the second or third book are going to be spicy, but this one isn't spicy at all. It is very slow burn, but yeah, I loved it. I don't know what else to say about this. I did have a little reading vlog featuring this book, so definitely go check out that vlog so you can get all of my opinions as I read the book for the first time. Next up, we have another book that I ended up DNFing, and I don't have the book sleeve on because I took it off and then I just never put it back on. It's actually in my room, but this is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. It is the second and final book in the duology Divine Rivals. I read Divine Rivals in February, I want to say, and I enjoyed it. I ended up giving Divine Rivals 4 stars. If you're unfamiliar with this duology, I want to say YA. Yes, it is YA fantasy. Also, my cat's drinking water if you hear slurping in the background. But Divine Rivals follows a main character who is a journalist on the front lines of a war war that's going on between two gods. Her brother ends up fighting in the war, and in order to find out what happened to him and to see if he's okay, because she hasn't heard from him in a number of months, she becomes a war correspondent and goes to the front lines. It is romance, but I feel like the romance only happens near the end of the book. The majority of the book in Divine Rivals is very slow paced, slow burn type of thing. The writing made me feel like I was reading a fairy tale, but it was very slow paced, and for the first, I want to say 200 or so pages, I was really bored with Divine Rivals. And then in the second half of the book, everything picked up, everything started moving, and I was hooked. So obviously I had to pick up Ruthless Rivals to see what was going to happen with the two main characters, because the first book did end in a cliffhanger. But I started reading this book and I got to page I think I want to say chapter 14. Yeah, I got up to chapter 14, page 112. I DNF'd it for now. I do plan on reading this book in April. I want to finish it. I've already read this much, like I'm invested, and I do want to know what is going to happen with the two main characters. But I was so incredibly bored with this book and nothing really was happening. So I ended up reading another book. I'm kind of glad I ended up DNFing this, because I didn't want to force myself to read this book and then give it a low star rating. I want to be in the right frame of mind when I start this. Maybe on a rainy day when I don't have much going on, I can pick this back up in April, or maybe take it to the beach with me and force myself to sit there and read. Once I DNF'd Ruthless Rivals, I started My Dark Desire, and immediately there's a smile on my face. I love this book so much. I actually just finished it yesterday and I gave it 5 stars. I started annotating the crap out of it. I highlighted so many good quotes. You are mine now, to protect, to corrupt, to ruin. I won't let anyone treat you badly. What do you want in return? Everything, I thought. I want everything you have to give and beyond. Every interview, every smile, every laugh, every breath, every touch. This book had me giggling and kicking my feet. Like, I was so invested in the two main characters. Did I even say the title of this book? My apologies. This is My Dark Desire by L.J. Shen and Parker S. Huntington. So it is written by 2 different authors. I believe they're best friends in real life and decided to write books together. This is actually the second book in the My Dark Romeo series. I did read My Dark Romeo last year, loved it. I think I ended up giving it a 4.5. There were certain things that I didn't like about the female main character, which I remember what those things were when I started reading this book, because Romeo and Dallas from the first book kept making little appearances in this one. And I remember why I found Dallas annoying in the first book. But in this book, it follows Romeo's best friend Zach and a female character named Farrell. She does go by Faye as well, but it follows Faye and Zach. Zach is a billionaire. He has pretty much struggled with touch and emotions and relationships since he was a young boy. His father saved him in a car crash but ended up dying himself because he saved Zach. So Zach has always dealt with survivor's guilt, and he's lived a very cold life. And then enters Faye, who kind of turns his world upside down in a good way. She's everything that he's not. She's feisty, she doesn't back down from anyone or anything. She's willing to fight for those that she loves. She's willing to sacrifice everything to get what she wants, and she ends up working for Zach as his maid. And it's kind of like a Cinderella retelling. There are definitely references from Cinderella in this book, which I thought were so cute. I am a big fan of Cinderella, so I just really enjoy those little references. And I really loved the two characters' banter with one another. I loved their character growth, plot development. Everything about this book was absolutely perfection. I loved it. Immediate 5 stars. I think I was still in the beginning of the book when I had decided I was going to give it 5 stars. Like, I just knew that this book was perfection and it was a masterpiece, and I was right. I very rarely annotate books. For me to annotate books, I have to be heavily invested in the characters and I have to really love the story. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I don't know what else to say about this book other than go read it. It is a new release. I think it came out in March, so for once I actually read a book after it came out. Normally I read books literally months after they've been out, or even years after they've been out, but this one I read immediately once I knew it was released. And yeah, I'm very very happy with this book. I loved it. And I cannot wait for the third book. I know the third book is going to be even better. Hopefully it's even better than this one, which I don't even think that's possible because this one was just perfection. Look at that cover. Absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to display this on my bookshelf. I loved it so much that if the author comes out with a special edition of this book, I might end up buying it. I normally don't like buying special editions of books because they're so expensive, but I love this one so much that I am willing to spend money on a special edition. I did read a couple other books on Libby, which if you didn't know, Libby is an app that you can download on your phone or on your tablet. I think you can download on your Kindle as well. I may be mistaken because I don't have a Kindle, but it's basically a library app where you can input your library card and then you have access to a ton of books that you can borrow, I think for a maximum of 21 days for free. They have a lot of popular books. Some of the books do have a hold period on them, so you have to wait anywhere from like 8 to 12 weeks to be able to read the book with the very popular new releases. But from my experience, you can put a hold on a book, and let's say the hold is for 12 weeks. A lot of times you actually get the book a lot sooner, but I ended up reading the second and third book of the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So I read Killer Instinct and All In. Killer Instinct, I believe, is the second book, and then All In is the third book. The Natural series is basically a YA version of Criminal Minds. It follows a group of teenagers who have these natural abilities that are used by the FBI profiling department, and they basically help solve criminal cases, mainly murder cases. I really enjoyed the first book, The Naturals. I think I ended up giving that book a 4-star rating. Loved it. I'm a huge fan of Criminal Minds. I really fell in love with the premise of the book, but I found with the second and third book, I was pretty bored. I ended up giving both of these books a 3.5-star rating. I enjoyed the character development, but for the most part, I was pretty bored and I didn't really think there was anything special with the second and third books. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I read Naturals so long ago that I wasn't really invested in the storyline anymore. Also with the second book, I didn't really enjoy the love triangle. I'm not a love triangle girly. I really can't understand how someone can be in love with two people or think that they're in love with two people. So I didn't really enjoy that aspect. I did start the fourth book. I'm currently in the middle of it. I don't want to say that I DNF'd it, but I plan on finishing it in April as well, which is the final book in the series. I don't know. I don't want to say what the second, third book were about because then I'll ruin the series for you if you haven't read it, but it follows the same group of teenagers and they're pretty much investigating a criminal case in each book. I will say that I like that each criminal case that they have investigated so far has to deal with a member of their team, and I like how they've become this little family and are there for one another. I really love that aspect of the book, but other than that, I just found it kind of meh. The final book that I want to talk about that I read in March was My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. I read this one on Libby as well, and I ended up giving it a 1-star rating. I love the premise. It basically is what the title suggests. This main character moves in with a literal vampire. I guess the vampire has been in a coma or has been asleep for, I believe it was 100 years or over 100 years, and he's trying to acclimate back into society, so that's why he gets a roommate to try to study her and to try to convince her to help him be more human. The execution just fell flat. Like I said, the plot sounded really fun and I thought it was going to be a cute little romantic comedy, and I was just, again, bored. I feel like I said that about the majority of the books that I read in March, but honestly, I was not invested in these two characters. I didn't feel their chemistry. I didn't really like their banter. The main character was all over the place, and yeah, I just didn't really like it, which was a bummer because I saw this book at Barnes & Noble. I loved the cover, so I wanted to read it on Libby first since it was available right away, and then if I had enjoyed it, I would have bought the physical copy, but I'm kind of glad I didn't buy the physical copy because I would have been severely disappointed that I had wasted money on this book. Thank you to Libby for allowing me to read this book for free. Now let's talk about the books that I want to read in April. I'm very excited about April. I feel like it's going to be a really good month. I already told you guys that I wanted to continue Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, so that is definitely going to be a priority for me in April. I do want to finish this duology, and then I want to start the Crescent City series by Sarah J Maas. I read ACOTAR by Sarah J Maas 2 years ago. Absolutely loved that series, and I've been itching for a adult fantasy series that makes me feel like ACOTAR did. I still think about Feyre and Rhys. Loved it, loved it. It was perfection. I'm really hoping that Crescent City lives up to the hype that I've been seeing and that is just as good as ACOTAR, if not better. I do have the first and the second book here. I want to say that I want to read the second book as well in April, but I feel like that would be a little bit of an overachiever move for from me because these books, like I said, are very thick, and I don't know if I'm going to have time to read both of these. But I will for sure be starting the first book in the series. If you're unfamiliar with the series, it goes, Bryce had the perfect life, working hard all day and partying all night until a demon murdered her closest friends, leaving her bereft, wounded, and alone. When the accused is behind bars, but the crimes start up again, Breeze finds herself at the heart of the investigation. She'll do whatever it takes to avenge their deaths. Hunt is a notorious fallen angel, now enslaved to the archangels he once attempted to overthrow. His brutal skills and incredible strength have been set to one purpose, to assassinate his boss enemies, no questions asked. But with the demon wrecking havoc in the city, he's offered an irresistible deal. Help Bryce find the murderer and his freedom will be within reach. As Bryce and Hunt dig deeper into Crescent City's underbelly, they discover a dark power that threatens everything and everyone they hold dear. And they find in each other a blazing passion, one that could set them both free if they only let it. It sounds amazing. I've heard so many good things about this book, about this series in general, and I'm very excited to start another fantasy book. I'm very excited to start another adult fantasy book. I do enjoy YA fantasy, but man, there's something about adult fantasy that just hits differently. So I'm very excited to start the Crescent series. Speaking of YA fantasy, I do want to start Powerless. This one kind of reminds me of the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I hope it's better than that series. It goes, the elites have possessed powers for decades, gifted to them by the plague, while those born ordinary are just that, banished from the kingdom and shunned from society. No one knows this better than Peyton Gray, an ordinary posing as a psychic to blend in with the elites. But when she unwittingly saves one of Elias' princesses, Kai, she's thrown into the purging trials, a brutal competition showcasing the elite's powers. If the trials and the opponents within them don't kill her, the prince she's finding feelings for will, if he discovers what Peyton is, completely ordinary. So it is a YA fantasy slash romance, I guess romantasy is the new term for that genre. Another book that I've heard really good things about, and I hope it doesn't let me down. And then I do have a dark romance here that I want to read. It's Gothicana by Runnix. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The cover is absolutely gorgeous. The book is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm very excited. It is a dark academia romance. Follows a main character who's basically been an outcast her entire life. Her name is Corvina. She gets accepted into this really old university that she's never heard of. She's like, what the heck? Maybe this is life telling me that I need to take a chance on something new. So she accepts, starts going to this university where she meets the main character dad, and he's kind of close offish. He knows everything there is to know about the university, and they're kind of forced together by a mystery that has been going on in the college for hundreds of years. People have disappeared and they're eager to find out what's going on and to solve the mystery. A lot of people have said that this book is really spicy, which I don't mind spice, but I really hope that the spice doesn't overwhelm the actual romance and plot. But I'm very excited to start this. And then I do have some books downloaded on Libby that I want to start as well. I want to read Wildfire by Hannah Grace, which is the second book in the Icebreaker series, or I guess the Maple Hill series. She changed the name of the series. I read Icebreaker last year, absolutely loved it, and I believe the third book comes out this year, so I do want to read the second book so I can be prepared for the third book. It is a college hockey romance book and series, so I'm very excited to start that one. And then I also want to read Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. I believe this is another second chance romance book by Carly. I read Every Summer After last year, and I was really enjoying it until the very end of the book when a trope was introduced, a trope that I hate with a passion was introduced, and I was like, you know what, this ruined the whole story for me. But I enjoyed the writing so much, and I enjoyed the atmosphere, the environment, everything about it was great. So I do want to give her writing a second chance. I want to read Meet Me at the Lake. It is a beach read, so I think it's going to be perfect to read at the pool or at the beach during the summer. And since it's starting to get a lot hotter here in Florida, I'm very excited to start reading a bunch of different beach reads. It goes, a random connection sends two strangers on a day-long adventure where they make a promise one keeps and the other breaks. Fern has wasted far too much of her adult life thinking about Will. She spent just 24 hours in her early 20s with the attractive, idealistic artist, a chance encounter that spiraled into a day-long adventure in the city. The timing was wrong, but the connection was undeniable. They shared every secret, every dream, and made a pact to meet 1 year later. Fern showed up, Will didn't. At 32, Fern's life doesn't look at all how she once imagined it would. Instead of living in the city, Fern's back home running her mother's lakeside resort. The place is in disarray, her ex-boyfriend's the manager, and Fern doesn't know where to begin. She needs a plan, a lifeline. To her surprise, it comes in the form of Will, who arrives 9 years too late with a suitcase in tow and an offer to help on his lips. Will may be the only person who understands what Fern's going through, but how could she possibly trust this expensive suit-wearing Mirage, who seems nothing like the young man she met all those years ago? But 10 years ago, Will and Baxter rescue Fern. Can she do the same for him? Another second chance romance. Hopefully this one's a lot better than Every Summer After. Every Summer After is not a bad book. Had she not introduced that final trope, I would have probably given it a 4 or 5-star rating. But since she introduced that trope that I absolutely hate, I don't even want to say what the trope is, it ruined the book for me. But hopefully, again, this one's a lot better. I think those are all the books I want to read in April. I don't want to add too many books to my TBR and then feel crappy when I'm not able to actually read all of them. Let me know in the comments below how your reading month went, what books you plan to read in April. I would love to know. And that's pretty much it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.